there's one thing that all of the philosophers we have studied up to this point in our course have agreed upon, it is that everything seems to be goal-oriented in the universe. Existence just doesn't sit there. It seems to be aimed at something. Everything is striving. Aristotle took this too seriously and thought, therefore, that since everything seems to be aiming at a goal, there must be a goal for existence. Boethius agreed and said this points to the ultimate goal of everything as God, the good. And then we saw that Schopenhauer agreed with the purposiveness of everything, but disagreed that this leads to an objective goal to life. That in fact, this purposiveness is empty. Now, Nietzsche was Schopenhauer's student, and he was greatly influenced by Schopenhauer, but what he wants to argue is also that this striving of existence is there, but is not empty. In other words, there's a third choice. You might say the first choice is, since everything seems to have a purpose, there is an ultimate purpose or meaning to existence. The second choice is to say everything seems to have a purpose, but it's an illusion. That purposelessness is a waste of effort. That's Schopenhauer. What Nietzsche is going to argue is everything strives for a purpose that it itself creates. In other words, that everything aims at its own purpose, and that that purpose is subjective and created by the being that is striving. Therefore, what we're going to see in our series of lectures on Nietzsche is that indeed the modern world that we live in is pretty much a creation of the thought of Nietzsche. How is this so? Well, when you think about that ethics is no longer studied as a science, but is seen as a matter of opinion and culture, well, where do we get that from? We get it from Nietzsche, as you're going to see. And therefore, what we have is a science that comes up, not about the physical world, but about human beings. But this science is no longer the humanity. It's no longer philosophy. What you have are the rise of what are called the social sciences. The social sciences consist of the study of history. Why does history become so important? Because Nietzsche is going to argue that truth is historical. There is no absolute eternal truth. Truth changes over time. Not only do values change, truth itself changes. This is what is called historicism. But not only does history change as a result of the evolution in human culture, but there is no human nature, Nietzsche is going to argue. And so human nature is itself going to be defined by the societies where humans live, and therefore the rise of sociology and anthropology, which is the science of human culture, even though it calls itself the science of humanity. Anthropos being the Greek word for humans. So he is the founder of the principles that ground sociology, history, and he is also the founder, you might say, the main founder of psychology. That since it is human thinking that influences reality, and human reality especially, then there must be a science of the human soul, the human psyche. And that this, again, is going to be taken away from the ideas behind philosophy and be made into an empirical science called psychology. It is Nietzsche who first introduces us to the ideas that Freud takes up, the ideas of subconscious purposes, purposes that we cannot determine, but they determine us. And since we cannot determine them, and we ourselves are often unconscious of them because they are subconscious, then we need an expert to excavate our psyche and allow us to become knowledgeable of ourselves in a way that we ourselves could never be on our own. This is a revolution that occurs because of Nietzsche's psychological analysis of the will that drives human existence. So what you see here is Nietzsche is going to be shown to be the founder of the social sciences. All of his ideas are already inherent in your everyday reality, and I'll be pointing them out as we talk more about them. But in this particular lecture, what we want to talk about is his critique of his teacher. He starts with his teacher's basic premise that existence is striving, yes, but it is a kind of striving that cannot be for existence. And this follows from Schopenhauer's own premises. Schopenhauer argues that the will to existence, or that all of reality is the will to exist. And of course, willing for Schopenhauer and Nietzsche is its form of desiring. When I will something, I desire it. But as Schopenhauer himself agrees, I never will or desire what I already have, because it's a striving for something, and I can't strive for that which I already have. And so therefore, I only desire what I don't have. But if I desire existence, then it follows that I don't exist. But then if I don't exist, then I can't desire, can I? And so therefore, I must exist in order to desire, which then implies that I have existence already, so I can't desire it. I don't desire existence. Yes, it is a striving, but Schopenhauer, Nietzsche says, you're wrong that it's a striving for existence, because existence is presupposed in the whole striving process. Then what is it a striving for? What governs this striving and directs it? Well, if I desire something, then I am working for, as we said, a state of existence that I don't already have. Obviously, by striving for some future, I'm striving for some future state of existence, but it has to be something different than what I already have or am. Therefore, if I desire a new state of existence, then I desire to change, don't I? Now, you all know this because all of you are taking this course or are watching these videos because you want to learn, and you are therefore striving for a future state of yourself that's different than yourself. Doesn't that presuppose something, though? Doesn't it presuppose that you think this future state is something that should be chosen over and above your present state? Because when I desire to change, what that means is that I am going and working toward a state of myself that's different than what I am now. And therefore, I'm rejecting my present self for that future self. Therefore, it follows that I think this future state is better than my present state, that I'm always working for something that I think is better than what I already am. I'm striving to improve. No one purposely strives to get worse. Everyone is striving for what they believe is good. So therefore, this very striving for a state that is different is a striving for a state that is better. But what does that mean? That means that my whole existence presupposes a standard of value. In other words, if Schopenhauer and every philosopher had understood what they were doing in describing existence as purposive, as striving toward ends or goals, they would realize that underlying the facts is value itself. This is crucial because what this means is it's not as if I go out into reality and I look and see what it is and then determine the facts, and then from those facts determine what's valuable or important. No, actually, my very striving to learn, my very striving to do anything already presupposes values that I bring to reality. And therefore, it's not the facts that determine my values, but my whole way of being in the world is that my values, already presupposed, determine existence, determine the direction of change. And since everything is striving, therefore it's value that determines reality, not the other way around. But what is value? Value is what I subjectively do. So what does this mean? It means it's not that there's this objective reality out there, and then somehow when I understand objective reality, I understand where I come from. Rather, it is the subjective valuing that determines the whole evolution of existence. Value is determined by the subjective, not the objective. I determine it with my values, not the other way around. So where do I get these values from? Is it a discovery that I make when I look at the universe and discover what is ultimately better and then I strive for it? Is the amoeba striving for some objective end that even though it's not conscious of, it always goes toward? Nietzsche's going to argue no. He's going to argue that we create our values, that the essence of our existence is value creation.